In this video, we are going to look at something called odds. Odds is similar to probability in that it is a way of expressing the chances of an event occurring, but how it expresses that is different from probability. With probability, we looked at building a fraction that was the number of ways of getting what we want over the total number of options. However, with odds, we won't be building a fraction. It'll look more like the 2 and then a colon and a 5. Now, odds can be expressed as a fraction, but just so we don't get confused between odds and probability, we're always going to express probability as a fraction, and we're going to express odds in this way of using a colon between the two numbers. Also, the two numbers mean something different than they mean in probability. The first number is the number of ways of you getting what you want, just like the top number is in probability. But the second number is the number of ways of getting what you don't want. So it's not the total, it's the complement of getting what you want, second number of getting what you don't want. In particular, this is called the odds in favor of. So the odds in favor of something is you put what you want as the first number, what you don't want is the second number. Let's look at an example. Alright, let's say we have a box with 5 socks in it, 5 black socks, 8 blue socks, and 9 white socks. And what's the odds of randomly pulling out 1 blue sock? So the way we would say this is, okay, so the number of ways of getting what we want is that there's 8 blue socks. But the number of ways of us not getting what we want is we're just going to look at the things that aren't blue socks. So we have 5 black socks and 9 white socks. So adding that together gives us 14 ways of getting what we don't want. So different than probability, the second number isn't all the options, it's the options of getting what you don't want. So one of the connections to probability is if we take these two numbers and add them together, we should get the total number of possibilities, or what would be the denominator if we were talking about probability. Okay, so like I was saying, this is odds in favor of. If you're ever asked for odds and it doesn't specify what kind of odds, so it just asks for the odds, we're going to do that as odds in favor of. Now what we'll do is look at what's called odds against. Okay, so when we're talking about odds against, we're essentially setting odds to not get what we want. So basically the two numbers are flip-flopped. In other words, the first number is going to be the number of ways of not getting what you want. And the second number will be the number of ways of getting what you want. So exactly what we saw in odds, the same numbers, but in the opposite order. Alright, going back to our example, if you have 5 black socks, 8 blue socks, and 9 white socks in a box, what's the odds against randomly pulling out 1 blue sock? I don't think I need this of. Okay, so for this, we want what we want. We want what we want. The number of things that we want comes second. So we want 8 blue socks. But what comes first is what we don't want. So that's going to be the 14 that we saw before. So we just flip-flop the numbers. So this is the odds against. So the odds for pulling out a blue sock was 8 to 14. The odds against pulling out a blue sock is 14 to 8 because it's against what we desire, what we want. Alright, so that's how odds work and how they're set up. The other thing we need to be able to do is switch back and forth between odds and probability. Alright, so for example, let's say that the odds for an event is 2 to 3. What is the probability of that event occurring? Now, this doesn't say against, so it's always for, unless it specifically says against. So the number of ways of getting what we want is going to be the first number. And in our probability, that would be the top number. Now, in our probability, the bottom number is the total possibilities. Now, our second number over here is getting what we don't want. It is not the total possibilities. The total possibilities is the sum of getting what we want and getting what we don't want. So our total possibilities in this case is going to be a 5. So our probability is 2/5. All right, now let's say that the odds against an event is 3 to 9. What is the probability? So now this is against. So what this means is when we're building our probability fraction and we're looking for our top number is what we want. Well, what we want and against is the second number. So here our numerator for our fraction will be 9 because that's what we want since this is odds against. And then our denominator will be the sum of these two, which in this case is 12. So it's 9/12, but since that fraction reduces, we'll want to reduce that. So our probability would be 3/4. And this brings up a good point with odds. We could have reduced the odds as well. This was given to us. 3/9 was the odds given to us. But if we wanted to reduce that, that would be the same odds as 1 to 3. All right, let's look at one more way of doing this. We'll start with probability and we'll go to odds for. All right, the probability that an event occurs is 3/10. What are the odds for the event? Now for odds, the first number, and this is odds 4, so the first number is the number of ways of getting what we want, which corresponds to the top number in probability. It's the second number that's a little different. The second number in odds is getting what we don't want, whereas the bottom number in probability is the total number of options. So if we have 3 ways of getting what we want and 10 total options, that leaves us with 7 ways of not getting what we want. In other words, I'm taking the difference between our total number of possibilities and the ways of getting what we want, because we either get what we want or we don't. So it's going to be a 7, but where that came from is 10 minus 3. So our odds for the event are 3 to 7. 3 chances we get what we want, 7 chances that we don't get what we want, gives us a total of 10 options. All right, go ahead and give some of these a try and see how you fare.